It's 40,000 years ago. You're sitting by a low fire, half asleep, the cold pressing on your back. Across the camp, you notice someone, a person you know, someone you've hunted beside, shared meat with, trusted with your kids, and right now, they're talking. Low and urgent, then gentle, then laughing, at a joke the empty air apparently just made. You follow their eyes. There's nobody there, just dark and cold and the space where a person should be standing. But they're nodding along, answering, comforting something you cannot see. You don't have a word for this. No clinic, no diagnosis, no pamphlet, no hotline, no group chat to quietly panic in. There's just you, the fire, and someone you love drifting somewhere you can't follow. So what do? That's the real question. Not the ghost story version, the human one. When someone in your band started hearing voices or stopped sleeping for a week or slipped somewhere the rest of you couldn't reach, what actually happened next? We love to assume we know. We picture something grim. And the honest answer turns out stranger and a lot warmer than the story we've been handed. Stay with me. This one doesn't go where you think. Here's the version you already own. It's in every movie, every cheap caveman cartoon. The tribe notices the strange one. Fear ripples through the group. And one cold, gray morning, they march that person out to the edge of the world and leave them there, because survival is brutal and has no room for a broken mind. Great scene. Genuinely cinematic. It's also mostly invented, because when we go looking at the bones, at the graves, at the handful of clues that actually survived 40,000 years, the cast them out story hits a wall. Over and over, the evidence points the other way. It shows people who were kept, fed, buried with care, not thrown away. Okay, this is where it gets weird. Start with the thing almost nobody tells you. Mental illness as a category is a modern invention. Not the experience, that's ancient. People have always heard voices, always sunk into a darkness that wouldn't lift, always, sometimes, lost the thread of the world entirely. That part is as old as we are. But the box we put it in, the labels, the diagnoses, the idea that this is a medical thing with a name, that part is recent. Blink of an eye recent. And here's the part nobody puts in the textbooks. Mental states don't fossilize. Think about what that means. You can dig up a broken leg. The bone remembers the break. You can read a healed skull like a page from someone's diary. But you cannot excavate a case of schizophrenia. You cannot dig up a grief that lasted 3 winters. A skeleton will never ever tell you it was afraid. A perfect, unbroken skull could belong to the calmest soul who ever lived, or to someone who spent 40 years terrified of the dark. Bone doesn't care. It keeps the same secret either way. Scientists have a slightly clumsy phrase for the trap here. Retrospective diagnosis, which just means trying to diagnose a dead person from their bones, thousands of years later, with zero chance to ask them a single question. It mostly doesn't work. So everything we're about to say comes with an asterisk. It's built from graves, from art, from the shape of a healed wound. Educated guesses, layered carefully, but guesses. Anyone who tells you they know exactly what a Stone Age mind felt is selling you something. Probably a supplement. Hold on to that asterisk. We're going to need it. So, if you don't have the word illness, how do you explain the person talking to the dark? You reach for the tools you've actually got. And their toolkit was not a medical one. It was spiritual, top to bottom. A person who saw things no one else could see, who heard voices moving in the wind, who fell into fits and came back speaking in strange words. That person wasn't a patient. In their world, they were someone the unseen had reached out and touched. Sometimes that was terrifying. Sometimes it was holy. Very often it was both at the exact same time, which, honestly, tracks. And that double meaning decided everything. A person touched by the unseen might be someone you fed first and listened to hardest, or someone you kept at arm's length in case whatever had them turned out to be catching. Same person, same behavior. 2 completely different fates, hanging entirely on the story the group chose to tell about it. And before you file all of this under primitive, please don't. This wasn't stupidity. It was a different operating system running the same confusing human hardware. We say a chemical imbalance in the brain. They said the spirits are close tonight. Be honest with yourself. Neither of us was standing there with perfect certainty. We just ended up with sharper labels and much, much worse campfires. There's a second temptation I want to dodge too. It's easy to point at hunter-gatherer communities alive today and treat them like a window straight into the deep past. They're not. They're modern people living modern lives, not fossils in motion. At best, they're a hint, one possible way humans have made sense of a mind that wandered off. Never a photograph of 40,000 years ago. Let that sit for a second. Okay, sometimes they went a lot further than words. Sometimes they picked up a sharpened piece of flint, put it against a living person's skull, and started to cut. The technical term is trepanation. In plain English, a hole in the head, a deliberate one, drilled, scraped, or sawed into the bone of a person who was, as far as we can tell, wide awake for the whole thing. And they had options. You could scrape the bone away, slow and patient, with a rough-edged stone. You could carve a neat little square and lift the piece straight out. Or you could drill a ring of small holes and pop out the middle. The world's grimmest connect the dots. Whoever did this had done it before. It was a skill. Passed down, practiced, refined. Somebody in that band was, unofficially, the skull guy. And this is not some rare freak event. The clearest early example comes from a grave in France, roughly 7,000 years old. In some places, holes like this show up in 5 to 10% of the Stone Age skulls we dig up. Different continents, different eras. The same strange idea, invented again and again. When something's wrong up there, open it up. Now, here's the part that genuinely breaks your brain. A huge number of these people survived. We know because bone is a snitch. When it heals, it leaves a smooth, rounded rim around the wound, and countless trepanned skulls have exactly that. The person lived, for months, for years. Some skulls carry 2, 3, 4 separate holes, healed at different times, which means somebody came back and did it again. Repeat customers for do-it-yourself skull surgery, performed with a rock. No anesthetic beyond, presumably, sheer nerve. Sit with that. No germ theory, no painkillers, no real idea what a brain even was. And still, that smooth, healed rim of bone. Which means that after all of it, somebody cleaned the wound, kept that person warm, watched over them for weeks, long enough to see them stand up and walk again. So why do it? Here's the honest answer. We're not fully sure. Some holes sit neatly over old fractures, clearly somebody patching up a head injury, but others sit over perfectly intact skulls, on people with no wound we can find anywhere. And that's the eerie set. One long-running idea is that when a person's mind changed, seizures, strange behavior, a voice that wouldn't stop, the treatment was to open a door in the skull and let whatever had crawled in, crawl back out. Maybe. That's a strong maybe, not a fact. But you have to admit, as theories go, it has a certain terrible poetry. Which drags us finally to the big one, the seductive theory. The one you've almost certainly heard whispered somewhere. That the people we'd now call mentally ill weren't shoved to the margins at all, that they were lifted up, that the one hearing voices became the shaman, the seer, the healer, the person who walks between this world and the other one, and comes back with something the tribe needs. It's a gorgeous idea. It might even hold a grain of truth. But I have to slow you way down here, because this is exactly the kind of story that gets too good, too fast, and then people repeat it like it's settled. It is not settled. Anthropologists have wrestled with this for over a century and still haven't agreed. Back in the 1960s, it hardened into a kind of rallying cry, the romantic notion that the people we medicate today would, in another culture, be treated as holy. That madness was really just a narrow society refusing to understand. And other researchers pushed back hard. They said, that's a fantasy. Look closely, and a shaman's trance and a psychotic break are not the same thing. They feel different. They work differently. One is chosen and trained and shaped, the other is suffered. One prominent scholar bluntly rejected the whole equation, full stop. And there's a real reason to get this right, not just to be tidy about it. Turn every troubled mind into a secret mystic, and you quietly erase the actual suffering, the fear, the exhaustion, the person who just wanted the voices to stop. Respect cuts both ways. So here's the grown-up version. It's a hypothesis, a living, contested, unresolved one. Not a warm ending we get to pocket and walk away with. Because the darker possibility is just as real. A mind that one village called sacred, another could call cursed. Revered one year, blamed the next, when the hunt failed and somebody needed to be at fault. Human beings hold both of those at once. We always have. And then it gets better. Because when you clear away the theories and look at the very hardest evidence we've actually got, one thing keeps rising to the surface. It isn't a cliff at the edge of camp. It's care. They found a man in a cave, dead a very long time, tens of thousands of years. His arm was withered and useless. He was likely blind in one eye, hurt in ways that would have left him helpless in a hard world. By every cold rule of survival, he should have died young and alone. He didn't. He lived for years. Someone fed that man. Someone slowed down for him. Someone decided that a person who couldn't keep up, who couldn't pull his weight, who cost the group something real, was still, without question, worth keeping. Now, be careful with that. He's a man with physical wounds, not a troubled mind. It doesn't prove how they treated someone who heard voices in the dark. Nothing can prove that. But it tells you what these people were made of. Long before hospitals, before medicine, before a single word was ever written down, they already knew how to hold on to their own. So, what did they do with the ones who lost their minds? The truth is, we can't say for certain. We were never in the room. But the evidence we do have doesn't point to abandonment. It points to a hand that stayed out a little longer than it had to. And you already know that hand. The friend you stopped understanding somewhere along the way, but couldn't bring yourself to give up on. The relative who drifted somewhere far and quiet, whose plate you set at the table anyway. That impulse isn't new. It might be the oldest thing we own. 300,000 years later, you're still doing it. Funny how that works. If you'd lived back then and someone you loved started talking to the dark, would you have called it a curse or a gift? Tell me in the comments.